I'm gonna pick her up today, 12:20.
Okay, good morning, good Erev Shabbos, everybody. I want to talk about a topic that we've all discussed at various times and experienced, and that's called Tircha de Tzibura. Things that happen in shul that perhaps ought not to happen because it causes some type of an inconvenience to the congregation and or it shows disrespect for the congregation. And we're going to go over several different examples of what's considered tircha. Tircha means, I'm going to translate directly, tircha means effort or I guess, expending effort unnecessarily or spending time. A tircha means it's difficult. You're making things difficult.
How about how about the word burden, Wally? Burden?
Burdensome. Okay, a burden on the community. And very often, Tircha de Tzibura is linked with the words Kavod HaTzibur, that it's considered disrespectful to the Tzibur, to the congregation, to hold them up unnecessarily. And bear in mind, just a little background information, many ancient shuls, if you ever looked at archaeological digs and different shuls from the time of the Beis Hamikdash period and shortly afterwards, a lot of them didn't have seats. So when people went to shul, they davened standing up. That's number one. And to keep people standing up unnecessarily when they're not doing anything related to the davening or to the laning was considered an affront, a disrespect to the tzibur. It's also considered a tircha de tzibura. Related to that, even later on, apparently, the practice was throughout Bavel and other shuls that during Kriyas HaTorah, people stood for the Kriya. Not only did they stand for the entire Kriya, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about standing for the Aseret HaDibros, but people stood for the entire Kriya, and they didn't talk. So if there was any interruption in the service and people would be standing around and not doing anything, that is the classic definition of Tircha de Tzibura, where people are just standing around while something else is going on. That's not part of davening or part of the laning, as we'll see. So the Gemara gives several different examples of how they categorized or how they gave instances of Tircha de Tzibura. Initially, and I'm not sure exactly why, but the rabbis wanted to include Parshas Balak with Parshas Kriya Shema. It's a whole separate sugi in the Gemara. But they didn't want to do that because adding Parshas Balak onto Parshas Kriya Shema would have been an unnecessary burden. And the Gemara says, Torach Tzibur, they didn't do it because it would have been a tircha de tzibura. It would have inconvenienced the people in shul. That's one example of tircha de tzibura, not extending davening too long. Another example, there was a shul, it was Shabbos, and it was a very, very cloudy day. And people thought it was already nighttime. So they davened Ma'ariv from Motzei Shabbos, thinking that it was night. The clouds disappeared, and they realized they davened during the daytime. So Shabbos was still in existence, and they already davened Ma'ariv. So they asked Rabbi, and Rabbi Paskin, that since they already davened, they don't have to daven again. And this was a special dispensation for the tzibur because we didn't want to engage in tircha de tzibura. They already davened, and we didn't want to burden them. And by the way, this psak, actually, we did this during COVID. If you remember, in order to keep a minyan together, very often they would daven Ma'ariv early, and people would go home, and you wait until Shabbos was over after Mincha. So they didn't want to keep people in shul too long, so they davened Ma'ariv Saturday night early, and they went home, waiting until Shabbos was over. And it's based on this Gemara. The classic case of Tircha de Tzibura is Rabbi Akiva. When Rabbi Akiva would daven with the minyan, with shul, he would daven very quickly. When he davened by himself, it's an amazing thing. He would start in one side of the room, and then they would find him across the room, or maybe several rooms away, because he would be so energetically davening. He'd be bowing and jumping up and down. When he was by himself, he wasn't concerned about how much time it would take. And he would add extra tefillos which would require him to bow and so forth. But when he went to tzibur, he davened quickly, so they shouldn't have to wait for him. When he was by himself, he was all over the place. Other example of tirkut tzibura, and this is getting close to our own time period in terms of the practice. The Kriyas Torah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, fascinating. The Aliyah for the Kohen Gadol is composed of two separate parshios. He reads, and at that time, people read their own Aliyahs, and in many Sephardic congregations they still do that. So the Kriya for the Kohen Gadol comes from Parshas Emor and Parshas Pinchas. So he would read Parshas Emor from the Sefer Torah, and then instead of rolling the Torah to Parshas Pinchas, or taking out a separate Sefer Torah for Parshas Pinchas, he would continue reading Baal Peh. First part of the Aliyah he lane, the second Aliyah from a different parsha he would lane Baal Peh, do it by heart. So Gemara says, why? Why just roll the Torah to Parshas Pinchas? And Rav Sheshes says we can't roll the Torah in public because of covered tzibur. I mean, it's people be standing around waiting while you roll your Torah. That's not dignified. Take out another Sefer Torah, like you do when Rosh Chodesh comes out on Shabbat. Have an extra Sefer. Same thing. It would be as if you're saying there's some type of a deficiency, a pagam, in the first Sefer Torah. People think there's something wrong with it. So you don't. You only lane from the separate Torah for a different aliyah, not within the same aliyah. So, and Rashi on the spot said, again, he usually expressed not tirchut tzibur, but covered tzibur, but implying the same type of thing. Because what's going to happen when you roll the Sefer Torah? People are going to be standing around. And if you're standing around and you're not talking, because it's Kriyas Torah time, you don't talk, that's considered inappropriate. And it's a tirchut tzibura. Rashi used the word covered tzibur, Rambam used the word tirchut tzibura, but they all agree that you can't stand around, just stand around not talking while they're doing something. That's considered a tirchut. So all of these things are giving us ideas, categories of what you can't do to inconvenience the tzibur. Okay, now, interestingly enough, while you can't roll a Sefer Torah during Kriyas Torah, if you're reading Maftir, you might be able to do it because at a time when you had the Maturgamon would after they came back from Bavel for a couple of hundred years, there was a takana that you had a translator. People didn't understand Hebrew, so they would read a pasuk and then it would be translated and explained in Aramaic. So if the Maturgamon is still talking, you're allowed to roll it. But again, that doesn't apply to us today. And the Maturgamon, which is why, by the way, because you had the Maturgamon explaining every pasuk, you had what they used to call the triennial cycle, where they used to finish the Torah once every 3 years, because explaining pasuk by pasuk in Aramaic will take a very, very long time. So they cut the parsha into 3. And for a number of years, that was a practice in Israel. In any event, these are examples related to Kriyas Torah, and in terms of the laning, where you shouldn't leave people just hanging while you're rolling a Torah. That you don't do. The only time we do this, by the way, if there's a mistake in a Sefer Torah, that's different. If you find a mistake in a Sefer Torah, then you close it up and bring another Torah out, and that's not considered tirchut tzibura because that's b'shum mitzvah. You have to do it. Okay. Another interesting historical aspect that we learned from the Gemara is that we have all seen, many of us, Sephardic Sifrei Torah, which are decorated with colorful kerchiefs and all types of things. I mean, we embellish our Torah. We have nice silk or satin covering on it, with inscriptions and the pictures. We have a silver crown. But in many places, they would also, in the Middle Ages, Rashi tells us, that they would adorn the Sefer Torah with colorful cloths and kerchiefs. And the halacha is, do you take them off? Do you take them on? When do you put them on the Sefer Torah? And what Rashi tells us, they would bring Torah and put all types of, I don't know, he calls them garments, but they're really cloths. And when they would finish reading, they would return the Torah to wherever they took it from and remove the garments. So the Gemara tells us that they should wait to remove it until after the tzibur has already left. In other words, don't take extra time to dress and undress the Torah, because that would also be considered a tircha while they're standing around waiting for you to decorate the Sefer Torah. Another example of tircha tzibura. Let's move on to another example of tircha tzibura. The Torah says, "V'hadarta penei zaken." We have to respect our elders and our gedolim by standing for them. V'yaresa, and demonstrate our reverence for Hashem that way. So we know that when a Rav comes into a room or a Talmid Chacham passes by, so you stand up as a sign of kavod. However, the Gemara tells us that a Talmid Chacham himself shouldn't cause a disruption or a burden himself by passing through a populated place where people might stand up for him. In other words, he should try to avoid a situation and walk quickly so that people don't have to interrupt what they're doing to stand up for him, which is difficult sometimes. I'll tell you two illustrations of this. I was once at a conference where there were many, many great gedolim. I mean, big Rosh Yeshiva. All the big Rosh Yeshiva were there. And Rabbi Eliasvei, Rosh Yeshiva from Philadelphia, was giving a shiur in a packed room. And I won't mention the name. There was a very prominent Rosh Yeshiva, one of the biggest yeshivas in America, who was very, very old at that time. And he had to be assisted to walk with two young men. And all the Rosh Yeshiva and the Gedolim were sitting in the front row. Rabbi Eliasvei is giving his shiur. And this elderly Rosh Yeshiva had to go to the bathroom. So he gets up with the two young men holding on to him, and he walks down the whole long aisle. Of course, when he does that, Rabbi Elia stopped his shiur, and everybody stands up while the Rosh Yeshiva walks out. Then Rabbi Elia continues the shiur, and a few minutes later, Rosh Yeshiva comes back to his front row seat. And again, he stops the shiur, everybody stands up until he makes his way down to the front. And this happened a few times during the shiur, which again, if the Rosh Yeshiva who had been fully aware of his, I mean, he was very old. I wouldn't say he was senile, but he was very, very old. He wouldn't have done that or just sat in the back, whatever. As this is going on, and Rabbi Eliasvei is giving the shiur, Rav Schneier Kotler, Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood, came in. It was a little bit late. So he knew intuitively, if he had walked down to his seat in the front row, the shiur would have stopped. Everybody would have stood up as he walked in, because he was the Rosh Yeshiva of Lakewood. So instead, what did he do? He sat down in the back row, not to be noticed. That's a gadol. Because he didn't want to interrupt. He didn't want to cause a tircha to the tzibur, everybody standing up and sitting down as he walked by. So he sat in the back row. Similarly, and this is based on a Gemara. I mean, Gedolim just don't do things on the top of their head. There's a basis for it. The Gemara tells us that Ameimar and Rav Zutra, two great Amoraim, they used to have people hustle them through a crowd. They used to literally sit on people's shoulders sometimes to rush them through so people wouldn't have to interrupt what they were doing and stand up for them. And they tried to almost make themselves inconspicuous. to be carried through. So this is also part of Tirchut Tzibura.
Carry through is not inconspicuous.
Well, no, but the point is that they were carried, but they were rushed through. People weren't even aware what was going on. So again, we all want to give cover to Al Talmidei Chachamim, but sometimes it could be at an inconvenience to what people are doing. It's their middle of the workday or what have you. So people were very concerned about it. There's a whole discussion as to whether or not Tirchut Tzibura is Doraisa and the Rabbanon. It certainly is a Torah value. Again, there are different types of Tirchut Tzibura, Kovod HaTzibur, interrupting the community, burdening people. Interesting. If you look at Rashi on all these cases, his emphasis is on the silence aspect, as the term of Tirchut Tzibura. If something else is going on during the time of the Aliyos, whether that's considered Tirchut Tzibura, if you have to just stand around quietly until it's finished. There are many Rishonim and Achronim who try to define Tirchut Tzibura. It's the type of thing that you'll know it when you see it. One of the Achron, Rav Yaakov Emden, one of the great Achronim, he has a very different approach. And again, nobody likes to drag out the davening on Shabbos. He is a big proponent of proper davening, and he doesn't like adding things that don't belong there unnecessarily. As such, he was opposed to making a Misha Be'er for Cholim on Shabbos, putting aside the halachic issues involved. He just felt that this is a Tirchut Tzibura. It's not part of davening. And I want to read his language is very sharp, very, very sharp. He says, She'ein kochenu yofel limchos me'acha shekvar nohagu mishon mekamonios. It's very hard to stop this minhag. It's been going on for years. Very hard. The ashrei sheyochazu b'ma'os hadas b'nietz aleinu haminhagim hagruim. He calls it a despicable custom. People should have the ability to get rid of despicable and inappropriate customs. And that's how he describes Misha Be'er for Cholim on Shabbos. And at the end of the paragraph, he says, Achshav noagim laharich b'misha beirach. He also talks about adding on extra misha beirachs. Ulefa'amim misakvim at chatzos. And between the misha beirach for cholim and adding on aliyas, people wind up sometimes they're in shul until 12 o'clock in the afternoon, which is horrible. Elbon hamanhigim hu. This is a reproach to the leaders of the community. If I had the ability, the capacity, I would abolish all these extra things that are not part of davening. And it's all because of Tirchut Tzibura, Kovod HaTzibur, etc. Okay.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Are you going to touch on any of the non-Torah tefillah related Tirchut Tzibura that happens way too often?
Such as?
Oh, I have a whole list.
Let's hear.
People that come in late and want to do their davening, but they're not sitting in the back, so they might be standing up doing their davening, even during the rabbi's Devar Torah. People that are not monitoring their children and they're running in and out, or children in the lobby screaming their heads off, or people what the Aron Kodesh open chatting away.
You are 100% correct. For people who come in late, first of all, coming in late is a particular sore point for me. It drives me crazy when, people would not be late to a theater or to a show, but they think nothing of coming in an hour late for davening. I just don't get it in terms of an example for children. It simply means davening is not important to them. And certainly not to stand up davening in front of the shul to catch up. They say that seichel is the fifth chelik in Shulchan Aruch. If people, you can't fix stupid, unfortunately. If people have no common sense, there's not much you can do. There are some shuls, which are a little more formal than our shuls, where they have ushers who would take care of that problem. Certain time, if the rabbi's speaking, the doors are closed, nobody comes in, and that's why people have assigned seats. But people who come in late shouldn't be in late, and if you are, try to be more inconspicuous. And again, that's seichel. That's not a question of halacha. That's just simple common sense. As far as kids coming in shul, I've spoken about this many times before. It's certainly not covered at Tzibur. It's not covered based at Knesses. And it's poor chinuch to teach children that the shul becomes a gym. When they can run up and down the steps, where are these parents? I understand that mothers want a few minutes of free time on Shabbos morning. If that's the case, then, work out a schedule. The husband goes to the Ashkama minyan, whatever it might be. But children, if they're in shul, if you're in a junior congregation setting, they're learning how to daven. That's one thing. Children should learn how to daven next to their parents. The shul is not a place for kids to run wild, and the babysitting groups that we have are not always supervised the way they should be. We have a youth leader and so forth and so on, but the worst time is not on Shabbos morning. The worst time is Shabbos mincha, where there are not even any groups, and just fathers come with the kids, and then the kids just go running wild. And thank God no accidents happen, because it's very easy for kids to run without supervision to fall and hurt themselves, or go outside and play in traffic. It's terrible. So I agree with you, but that doesn't fall into covered at Tzibur. That just goes into common sense. And as I said, you can't fix stupid. And unfortunately, there are some people that are simply stupid. It hurts to say it, but that's the truth. And I think I mentioned once before, when they built the Eruv, I wanted the Eruv to stop a block away from the shul, and everybody yelled at me. Oh. And then a few months after the Eruv was installed, they apologized, because with the kids and the baby carriages and all the other, it caused a lot of confusion. So, covered at Tzibur, tirchot at Tzibur, common sense. If we truly understand what a shul is and what a shul represents and why we're in shul, then none of these things would happen. But unfortunately, in the chinuch of our children and of our adults who were once children, somehow this lesson got lost. And I don't know why. I don't know why schools don't teach about davening. I don't know why rabbis don't take a stronger stand about it. I can't answer that question. But getting back to our tirchot tzibura, in practical terms, we generally try not to roll a Sefer Torah, unless if you only have one Sefer Torah, and you have to go from one aliyah to the next, that's a different situation. But clearly, we don't want to roll it and people just standing around, because that would violate Kavod HaTzibur or Tirchot Tzibura.
Wally,
Yes.
I remember one of the classes that we had, we go so far with Tirchot Tzibura in terms of the Sefer Torah. For those of us, because there's different ways of doing this, who get the first bracha, some of us keep it open when we say the bracha, and other people close it. But for the people that keep it open, I heard that one of the reasons are that you shouldn't take a couple of seconds to find the place. When it's open, the Balkara sees where it is. When you close it, then you have to find the place again. So that's how sensitive we are to Tirchot Tzibura. Every second counts.
Absolutely, because you don't want people just standing around in dead air time, dead air space. Absolutely. Also, we mentioned the other day about additional hosafos. Actually, the Be'er Heitev quotes different postscript that say you can't have more than maximum of 10 aliyahs on Shabbos. If you have Asofos, you can't make more than 3 Asofos, because that would be Tirchut Tzibura. And the Mishnah Brura also mentioned, doesn't give a number, but he says that you try to avoid machlokas, but also you don't want to have Tirchut Tzibura. Now, the last category, which we are all aware of, if you're in a shul, I remember when I was at YU, and in the Beis Medrash for davening, all the Rosh Yeshiva would be lined up in the front row. So the question would be, who do you wait for to begin Chazaras Hashatz? So if Rav Soloveitchik was there, it wouldn't be a problem. But then if Rav Soloveitchik was not there, maybe Rav Lifshitz, but the oldest Rosh Yeshiva, how do you have all the Rosh Yeshiva lined up? Who do you wait for? That's a tricky question. In general, the halacha is that you really don't have to wait, technically speaking. If they're individual, it'll take a very long time to daven. You don't have to wait for them. However, the Magen Avraham says that Bisman Hazeh, we wait for the Av Bezdin or the rabbi or the local gadol who happens to be davening with you until he finishes, because he also is aware of the halacha of Tirchut Tzibura, and he won't prolong it necessarily. Now that we get into a very gray area here. Certainly, the Rabbanim know the halacha of Tirchut Tzibura. So, are they davening long because they're not concerned about Tirchut Tzibura, or are they davening long because since people know they daven long, they might take longer to daven their own Shemona Esrei? It's also about as a chinuch. I mean, I remember there was a wedding, and my son was at the wedding, and Rabbi Yudin was at the wedding. They were davening mincha, and they all waited for Rabbi Yudin to finish davening before they continue Chazaras Hashatz. And my son said to me, I always enjoy davening in the minyan with Rabbi Yudin, because I know I don't have to rush. I can take my time davening. He'll still daven longer than me, but I can get more out of my davening when I know that I'm not finished by a certain time. My son-in-law, for example, takes a long time to daven Shemona Esrei. I don't think he has said Kedusha in years, because he never finished on time to say Kedusha. Because where he davens, even the rabbi davens faster than he does. Now, putting aside the issue of how long the rabbi of the shul should daven, knowing that people are going to wait for him, there's a fascinating Mishnah Brura, and we'll conclude with this. The Mishnah quotes the Magen Avraham about waiting for the Rav to finish, but if the rabbi is concerned that he's taking too long and people are waiting for him, so what he could do, he could take 3 steps back and allow the Chazaras Hashatz to take place, and then he could finish his Amidah afterwards. And if I'm not mistaken, very often this is what Rabbi Yudin does. Sometimes you'll notice he'll take 3 steps back and he'll continue davening for a while, even after Kedusha, because he hasn't finished davening yet, but he didn't want to be Matriach Tzibur, have to wait till he finishes his entire Shemona Esrei. So that's an out that the Mishnah Brura allows people to do to finish their Shemona Esrei. But Tirchut Tzibura, it's all tied in. Tzugabudin, as Rabbi Yudin would often say, it's all connected with how we view davening, with how we view Kedushas Beis HaKnesses, with how we view the act of praying in its Tzibur, with its Tzibur. And it's an area that I think our shuls and our schools are deficient in not teaching about the siddur, about davening. I said many times before, the siddur is the book that with which we are most familiar, but know the least. The structure of the siddur, what davening is all about, it's an area that I think should be emphasized by rabbis and by schools. And unfortunately, it's not. There are a question out there. There's some. No questions. Okay.
Wally?
Yes.
Okay. If you notice in shul, the longer the person who's davening for the Amid takes to daven, and the longer we wait to start the Chazaras Hashatz, the more people come for the end of davening.
So what's the point? The longer it takes,
Yeah,
what?
that it's not just the Tircha de Tzibura, but people are missing the end of davening because they have to take the kid to school or they have to go to work. So they leave early, and that's something else that's not right.
Okay, there are many. Look, that's why we have different zmanim for tefillah. If you have to go to an earlier minyan, if you're the one who's driving the kids to school, then go to an earlier minyan. Rabbi Markowitz waits outside with several other guys whose kids are waiting for the school bus, and he goes to the 8:15 minyan. Something. I mean, you have to make your schedule, and so it works out for davening and for whatever other responsibilities you have. You can't, you shouldn't shortchange davening. You got to take care of your kids. So you go to an earlier minyan if you have to, or a later minyan. There are options. There are options in our community for that. But again, the notion of understanding how important davening is, how to daven, I think we're missing the boat with our children. We're not teaching them how to daven. We're not teaching about the kedushas beis hakneses. If they view the shul as a gym, as a place to run around, then as they get older, the respect for the shul is not going to be there. And I again, maybe I'm just being an old person who looks back at the young people in shul today, and I go tisk tisk that these young people today miss the boat because they themselves don't have kedushas beis hakneses on their mind, and they don't behave that way. I mean, talking is much better than it used to be, but still, people coming late to shul shows a disregard for what davening is all about.
I agree with you.
I have no other way to express it or explain it. I feel very disappointed. I always quote to the example when in Teaneck, Rabbi Rothwach's shul, what's it called? Beth Aaron. When Beth Aaron was first founded 5 or 6 rabbis ago, and the first rabbi, Rabbi Fass, was a chemist. He took no salary for being the rabbi of Beth Aaron when the shul opened up. And for the first 2 years that the shul was in existence, all he spoke about was davening. Davening, siddur, nusach, how to be. All he spoke, every shiur, every dvar Torah, every shalosh shudas, everything before mincha, every time he had to speak, that's all. And many of the minhagim that they do today go back to that time, almost 50 years ago. Because he emphasized it. Rabbis today, you're afraid you might upset somebody. You're afraid you might get somebody's nose bent out of shape. I think it's important. I think what's that? I think yes.
I have a question going back to what you said that you think perhaps Rabbi Yudin does it or any Rav who he knows that they're waiting for him to finish to go back to, Chazarat Hashatz. So, and you said something about he could take 3 steps back and then after Kedusha, he would continue his davening. But how can he move? I thought we're not supposed to move until we're finished.
Okay. You're absolutely correct. And I'm sure the Mishnah Berurah knew that as well. And again, he was balancing different values, and Tircha de Tzibura was felt to be so important that the rabbi could symbolically indicate that he was finished davening, even though he really wasn't finished davening, by just taking 3 steps back. And again, if you watch Rabbi Yudin during the week, or perhaps even on Shabbos, I don't know, a Shabbos is less of a problem, but during the week, very often he'll do that. So it's an
Wally,
out. Yes.
I learned in the Gemara that if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of davening, the Shemona Esrei, you're allowed to go, but you're not allowed to talk to anybody. When you come back, you can continue from where you were up to.
Yes, that is certainly true.
So you are allowed to walk during Shemona Esrei.
Yeah,
if there's a purpose.
There are exigent circumstances, and that would be one of them.
Yes.
Anyhow, that's a brief survey of Tircha de Tzibura from the time of the Beis HaMikdash until today. Hopefully, we'll have no Tircha de Tzibura this Shabbos, or on a weekday anyway. If there are no questions or comments or criticisms, I wish you all a great Shabbos.
And a
When are you talking? When are you talking from the Amid on this topic?